The giant space station floated in the dark space like a metal city made of lights and spinning wheels. The station was bigger than any human building ever made, and it turned slowly around the orange planet, Kepler 442b, which looked like a burning ball. From faraway ships from all over the galaxy were coming and going like busy ants around their home. The most important meeting in the history of space was about to begin, and everyone knew it. Wu Jin stepped out of the small human transport ship and looked around at all the strange sights. His feet made soft sounds on the metal floor of the docking bay. He wore a simple gray suit that looked very plain and normal, like something an office worker might wear on Earth. His hair was neat and short, and he carried only one small black briefcase in his left hand. He did not wear any armor or carry any big weapons like the other visitors to the station. All around him were aliens that looked like nothing he had ever seen before. Some were tall and thin like walking trees, some were short and round like living rocks, some had too many arms, and some had no arms at all. Their skin was every color from bright red to deep blue to shining silver. Some had scales like fish, and some had fur like animals, and some looked like they were made of crystal or metal. A group of lizard people called Vorthak were standing near a big red ship. These creatures were as tall as basketball players, but much stronger. Their green and brown scales covered their bodies like natural armor, and their yellow eyes were cold and mean-looking. They had long claws on their hands that could cut through metal, and their mouths were full of sharp teeth. When they saw Wu Jin, they started to laugh in a hissing sound that made other aliens look over. The Vorthak leader was named Seth, and he was the biggest and meanest looking of all of them. His scales were darker than the others and had scars from many battles. He wore a cape made from the skin of some dead animal and gold rings on his claws. He pointed one sharp claw at Wu Jin and said something in his language that made the other Vorthak laugh even more. Near them were the Zephyrians, who looked like they were made of living crystal. Their bodies were clear and blue, and electricity moved through them like lightning in a bottle. When they moved, they made a humming sound like power lines, and their eyes glowed bright white. They were very proud of being smart and having the best technology in the galaxy. They looked at Wu Jin like he was a simple child who did not understand grown-up things. The mollusk people were there too, even though they usually stayed on their homeworlds. These aliens looked like giant snails without shells, but they walked on two legs like humans. Their skin was wet and gray, and they left a trail of slime wherever they went. They were supposed to be peaceful, but everyone knew they had weapons that could kill entire planets with diseases. They wore big metal suits to protect their soft bodies and to help them breathe in the station air. Wu Jin walked slowly through all these different aliens toward the registration desk. Many of them stopped talking to stare at him. Some pointed with whatever they used for hands. Others made sounds that might have been laughing in their languages. He could hear them whispering to each other in words he did not understand, but he could guess what they were saying. The human looked so ordinary compared to all of them. He was not very tall or very strong looking. His skin was the boring brown color that many Earth humans had. He did not have claws or extra arms or glowing eyes. He looked like he could not hurt anyone even if he tried. The aliens thought he was probably just some government worker who got the job because no one else wanted it. At the registration desk, a robot with too many arms scanned Wu Jin with a red light beam. A computer voice spoke in perfect human English, telling everyone who he was. Li Wu Jin, it said, ambassador from Earth, former military service, it said, but then it said the details were classified or secret. Most of the aliens who heard this thought it just meant he used to be a simple soldier before he became a diplomat. They had no idea what kind of soldier he really was. The big meeting room was in the center of the station, and it was amazing to see. It was round like a ball, but hollow inside, with platforms floating in the air at different levels. Each platform was made for a different type of alien with their own air and gravity and lights. The platforms moved slowly around a big empty space in the middle where speakers could stand. The human platform was small and plain-looking. It had normal Earth air and normal gravity and regular white lights. It was positioned low down near the bottom of the room, which was the section for new species or unimportant ones. The message was very clear: humans were not considered important by the Galaxy Council. Yet Wu Jin found his platform and sat down in the simple metal chair that was waiting for him. He opened his briefcase and took out a notebook and pen, which made some aliens laugh again because they used computers and mental links to take notes. He also took out what looked like a regular tablet computer and set it on the small table next to his chair around him. The other platforms were much more impressive. The Vorthek platform looked like a small fortress with weapons and armor decorations. The Zephyrian platform hummed with energy and had floating displays everywhere. The mollusk platform was covered in some kind of protective foam that kept their skin wet. Other alien platforms had strange decorations that showed how powerful and important their species were. As more aliens arrived, the room filled with strange sounds and smells. There were growls and chirps and electronic beeps and musical tones. Some aliens breathed gases that smelled like flowers, and some that smelled like rotten eggs. The air itself seemed to shimmer with different chemicals and particles that each species needed to stay alive. Wu Jin sat quietly through all of this, watching everything and everyone with calm eyes that missed nothing. He wrote small notes in his notebook sometimes, but mostly he just observed. He did not try to talk to other aliens or make friends or show off. He just waited patiently, like he had been trained to do in situations like this. Some of the aliens started to make jokes about how boring the human looked. They said he was probably scared or confused or maybe not very smart. One Vorthek warrior made a motion with his claws like he was cutting something, and the others laughed. Other species joined in making fun of the human who sat alone on his small platform, but Wu Jin did not seem to care about the jokes or the laughter. He kept writing in his notebook and checking his tablet computer like he was doing very important work. He looked calm and relaxed, like someone who had done this kind of thing many times before, even though he was surrounded by creatures who could probably tear him apart with their bare hands or claws or whatever they had. He showed no fear at all. The big meeting was about to begin, and everyone could feel the excitement in the air today. The Galaxy Council would vote on whether humans could join their organization. It was the most important day in Earth history, but the human representative looked like he was just having a normal day at work. None of the aliens realized that they were looking at one of the most dangerous humans who had ever lived. They thought he was weak and harmless because that was exactly what he wanted them to think. The real surprise would come later when they learned what kind of man Earth had sent to speak for all humanity. The meeting started when a loud bell rang through the chamber that made every alien stop talking and pay attention. A floating robot came down from the ceiling and spoke in a voice that all the translator machines could understand. It said the Galaxy Council meeting was now beginning, and that today they would decide if humans could join their group. The first speaker was Seth, the big Vorthek leader, who walked to the center platform with his claws clicking on the metal floor. He stood tall and proud, like a king talking to his servants. His yellow eyes looked around the room at all the other aliens before he started to speak in his hissing voice. Humans are weak creatures, he said, and his words were translated into every language. In the room, they have soft skin that breaks easily, and they die after only 100 years or less. They cannot see in the dark like we can, and they cannot breathe underwater or in space. Without machines to help them, their bodies are so fragile that they need clothes just to keep warm. The other Vorthek on their platform made hissing sounds that meant they agreed with their leader. Some other aliens made their own sounds of agreement. The room started to fill with mean laughter as more aliens joined in making fun of humans. Look at their so-called ambassador. Seth continued, pointing one sharp claw at Wu Jin. He sits there with his little book and his simple clothes like a child, playing at being important. He does not even have proper weapons or armor like a real warrior would have. How can such weak beings think they deserve to sit with us? Wu Jin kept writing in his notebook and did not look up when the Vorthek pointed at him. This made Seth even more angry because he thought the human was not paying attention, or maybe was too scared to look at him. The big lizard alien made a sound like an angry snake and kept talking. These humans have barely learned to fly between the stars, while we Vorthek have conquered dozens of worlds. They have no empire and no colonies. They live on just one small planet like insects hiding under a rock. They call themselves intelligent, but they still fight wars with each other instead of working together like civilized beings. The Zephyrian delegates stood up next on their crystal platform. The electricity inside their body got brighter and made crackling sounds as they spoke. Their voice sounded like music mixed with the hum of machines. We have studied human technology the crystal alien said, and it is very primitive compared to what real galactic species have developed. Their computers are slow and their ships are clumsy. They use chemical rockets like children, playing with fire while we have mastered energy. That bends space and time itself. More aliens started laughing and making jokes. The mollusk delegate spoke next, even though their species was supposed to be peaceful. Their wet voice sounded like they were talking underwater. Humans are also too violent. For galactic society, the slug-like alien said they fight wars over resources that could easily be shared. They cannot even agree on how to govern their own planet. How can we trust them to work with dozens of different species peacefully? The insults kept coming from alien after alien. Each one tried to say something worse than the one before. Some made jokes about how humans looked funny with their hair and their small teeth. Some said humans smelled bad or made ugly sounds when they talked. Others said human art and music were boring, and Simple Wu Jin kept writing in his notebook through all of this. His face did not change, and he did not try to argue or defend his species. This just made the aliens think he was weak or stupid, so they got braver with their insults. One alien that looked like a giant spider said humans would make good pets for more advanced species. Another alien that was covered in metal said humans could work in their minds since they were used to living underground like worms. A few aliens made jokes about keeping humans in zoos so other species could look at them and laugh. The worst insult came from an alien that looked like a big insect with too many legs and sharp claws. They were part of a group mind species where all the bugs thought together as one. Their voice sounded like 1,000 insects buzzing at the same time. Human females would make interesting breeding stock for our warrior castes, the insect alien said. The other bugs in their group made excited clicking sounds and waved their claws around. They started talking about how they could use human women to make hybrid soldiers that would be smarter than regular bugs, but still loyal to the hive mind. This was the moment when something changed in the room. Most aliens kept laughing, but some of the smarter ones noticed that the human had stopped writing in his notebook. His pen was not moving anymore, and his hand was very still, like he was concentrating on not moving. The insect aliens kept talking about their plans for human women. They described in detail what they wanted to do and how they would set up breeding farms on Earth. The other aliens thought this was very funny and started making their own suggestions about how to use humans as slaves or pets or worse. Wu Jin slowly put his pen down on the table next to his notebook. For the first time since the meeting started, he looked up from his writing. His face was still calm, but something in his eyes had changed. The few aliens who were watching him closely noticed that he did not look scared or sad or angry. He looked like someone who had just made an important decision. The human ambassador stood up from his chair very slowly, like he had all the time in the world. The insect alien was still talking about breeding farms when Wu Jin picked up his tablet computer and started walking toward the center platform where speakers were supposed to go. Some aliens stopped laughing when they saw the human moving. Most kept making jokes because they thought he was going to beg them to stop or maybe cry about the mean things they had said. But a few of the older and wiser aliens started to feel worried because they recognized something dangerous in the way the human was moving. Wu Jin walked across the chamber floor with the same calm, quiet way he had walked through the docking bay earlier. His footsteps were soft, but somehow every alien in the room could hear them clearly. The sound seemed to cut through all the laughing and joking like a knife through cloth. When he reached the center platform, he set his tablet down gently and looked around the room at all the aliens who had been making fun of him. His expression was still calm and friendly, like someone about to have a nice conversation with old friends, but there was something else there, too, something that made the smart aliens start to worry even more. The laughter in the room began to die down as aliens realized the human was about to speak. They expected him to beg or make excuses or maybe offer them bribes to change their minds. Instead, Wu Jin smiled a small, quiet smile that somehow made several aliens feel very uncomfortable. Wu Jin stood on the center platform and looked around at all the aliens who had been laughing at him just moments before. His face was still calm and peaceful, like someone about to tell a bedtime story to children. The big room became very quiet as everyone waited to hear what the human would say. "Thank you all for sharing your thoughts about my species," he said in a voice that was neither loud nor angry, but somehow every alien in the room could hear him clearly. The translation machines worked perfectly so every creature understood his words in their own language. I've learned many interesting things today about what you think of humans. Some aliens started to laugh again, because they thought the human was going to apologize or beg them to change their minds, but Wu Jin kept talking in the same calm, friendly voice like he was having a nice conversation. No, he said, looking directly at Seth, the Vorthok leader. Your comments have been very helpful. They have taught me exactly what kind of species we are dealing with here in the Galaxy Council. I was not completely sure before today, but now I understand perfectly. The human reached into his pocket and pulled out his tablet computer, which still looked like a simple, normal device that any office worker might carry. He touched the screen a few times, and suddenly all the big displays around the chamber turned on, showing information that made many aliens sit up and pay attention. My name is Li Wu Jin. He continued as text appeared on the screens around them, but that is not the whole truth about who I am. Let me give you my complete introduction. The screens filled with military records and medals and pictures of battles. The aliens who could read human writing started to whisper to each other as they saw what was being displayed. Colonel Li Wu Jin. The screens said Special Operations Command Black Level Classification, Top Secret 847, confirmed eliminations. The computer voice announced reading from the records. 23 different combat zones, specialist in unconventional warfare, psychological operations, and what humans call diplomatic solutions. Through superior firepower, the laughter in the room stopped completely as aliens realized they had been making fun of someone who was much more dangerous than they had thought. The records showed battles and missions that most of them had never heard of, wars that humans had fought against pirates and raiders, and other threats that the Galaxy Council had ignored. But Wu Jin was not finished talking, yet he said with that same calm smile, the leaders of Earth were not sure what kind of person to send to this meeting. We talked about sending a politician who could make nice speeches. We thought about sending a scientist who could impress you with knowledge. We even considered sending a regular military officer who could look tough and scary. He touched his tablet again and new information appeared on the screens. In the end, we decided to send someone who could handle any situation that might come up. Someone with what you might call diverse experience. Someone who could talk nicely if that worked, but could also do other things if talking did not work. The screens now showed pictures of destroyed enemy bases and captured weapons and prisoners who had tried to fight against human forces. The aliens started to understand that their weak-looking human ambassador had personally been responsible for most of these victories. Now, I want to talk about some of the concerns you raised about human capabilities. Wu Jin continued like a teacher explaining something to students, especially the suggestions about our military weakness and our supposed inability to defend ourselves. He walked slowly around the platform while he talked, making eye contact with different aliens as he spoke. Some of them tried to look away but found themselves staring at this human who seemed so different from the quiet man who had been sitting and taking notes just minutes before you. See, humans have a saying, he said, stopping to look directly at the insect alien, who had talked about breeding farms. The saying is, do not judge a book by its cover. It means that how something looks on the outside might not tell you what it is really like on the inside. For example, he continued holding up his tablet. This simple computer that I'm holding, it looks like a normal device that any human office worker might use, but it is actually something much more interesting. It is a quantum communicator that connects directly to the human fleet that is currently positioned just outside your sensor range. The room exploded into noise as aliens activated their own scanning equipment and started looking for human ships that they had not noticed before. Emergency lights started flashing on many of the platforms as the various species realized that their supposedly secure meeting location might not be as safe as they had thought. Oh, please do not worry, Wu Jin said calmly as panic spread through the chamber. They are not here to attack anyone. They are here to demonstrate a point about human capabilities. You see, while you have all been sitting here debating whether we are worthy of joining your organization, we have been doing something else. He touched his tablet screen again, and the main display showed detailed scans of every single ship in the Galaxy Council fleet. The technical information was impossible to ignore. The scans showed every weapon, every shield generator, every engine system, and every weakness in the supposedly most advanced ships in the galaxy. We have been watching, he said simply. We have been learning, we have been preparing. And we have been getting ready for the possibility that this diplomatic meeting might not go the way we hoped it would. Silence in the room was now complete as every alien stared at the screens showing just how completely the humans had penetrated their defenses. The Vorthek warriors looked at scans of their own warships that showed details they thought were secret. The Zephyrians saw their energy systems mapped out in ways that should have been impossible. The mollusks realized that their bioweapons had been analyzed and probably neutralized. The thing about humans, Wu Jin explained in the same conversational tone he had used since the beginning, is that we are very good at learning from our mistakes. We spent the last 3 years studying your species, your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses, and your fears. We learned something from every trade deal, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange. He paused and looked around at the aliens who had been laughing at him. They were not laughing anymore. Most of them looked scared or confused or angry, but none of them looked like they thought humans were weak and harmless anymore. And we prepared for the possibility that you might not want to treat us as equals. He continued, we hope for the best, but we plan for other outcomes too. We are very good at planning for different possibilities. It is something humans learn to do when they spend a lot of time in dangerous situations. The displays changed again to show that the human ships were not just nearby but were already locked onto critical systems throughout the space station itself. The targeting information was precise and detailed, showing that if the humans had wanted to attack, the battle would have been over before the aliens even knew it had started. We could have destroyed this entire station and every ship around it before you even knew we were here, Wu Jin said matter-of-factly, but that would not have been very diplomatic, and we really did hope that we could work this out peacefully. Several aliens started reaching for weapons or communication devices, but stopped when they realized that the human ships probably already had weapons aimed at them. The message was very clear. If humanity had wanted a fight, they would have already won it. So now we have a choice to make. The human ambassador continued. We can try to work together as equals in a galaxy that has room for everyone, or we can demonstrate why treating humans as weaklings and slaves might not be the best idea you ever had. Wu Jin touched his tablet screen once more, and the lights in the chamber dimmed slightly as new holographic displays appeared in the air above the center platform. The three-dimensional images showed the space around the station in perfect detail, with every ship and asteroid marked clearly. But what made the aliens gasp in shock was seeing dozens of human ships that had been completely invisible until now. Our stealth technology is quite advanced, he said as the aliens stared at the ships that seemed to materialize from empty space. We have been here for 6 hours already, watching and listening and preparing. You never knew we were here because we did not want you to know. The Vorthek leader Seth stood up on his platform with his claws extended, ready to fight, but when he looked at his own tactical displays, he saw that human weapons were already aimed at his ship and at him personally. The targeting systems were so precise, they could hit individual rooms inside his vessel. How is this possible? Seth hissed, his forked tongue flicking out in anger. We have the best sensors in the galaxy. Our technology has been tested in hundreds of wars. Wu Jin smiled politely, like someone explaining something simple to a confused child. Your sensors are very good for detecting ships that want to be detected, he said, but humans spent many years fighting enemies who also did not want to be found. We learned to hide from things much more dangerous than your scanning equipment. The holographic display zoomed in to show individual human ships in detail. The aliens could see that the vessels were not just hidden but were actually more advanced than anything in the Galaxy Council fleet. The human ships were smaller and faster, but carried weapons that could destroy much larger targets. We also learned to study our enemies very carefully. Wu Jin continued. The display changed to show detailed internal maps of every alien ship in the area. We know exactly how your ships work, where your weak points are, and how to disable or destroy them without damaging the crew if we choose. Toa Zephyrian delegates stood up with electricity crackling through their crystal body. This is impossible, they said in their musical voice. Our energy shields are impenetrable and our quantum computers can calculate defense. Patents faster than any biological mind can think. The human nodded respectfully. Your shields are indeed very impressive, he agreed. But we noticed something interesting about them. They work by bending energy around your ships in a specific mathematical pattern. The problem is that the pattern has a frequency, and any frequency can be matched or cancelled out. The display showed waveforms and energy readings that made the Zephyrian engineer types buzz with alarm. The humans had not only figured out how their shields worked, but had found a way to make them useless. The mathematical proofs were right there for everyone to see. We spent 2 years just studying your shield technology alone, Wu Jin explained. We captured some pirates who were using stolen Zephyrian equipment, and we took it apart piece by piece until we understood how every part worked. Then we built something better. The mollusk delegate made a wet gurgling sound that might have been laughter or fear. Our biological weapons can destroy entire ecosystems, they said. Their voice sounded like someone talking through thick mud. Even if you can penetrate our ships, our spores can kill any carbon-based life form in ours. Wu Jin nodded again as if this was also not a problem. We studied those too, he said. Remember that cultural exchange program 3 years ago when you invited human scientists to visit your bioresearch facilities? Our people learned quite a lot during that visit. The display showed molecular diagrams of mollusk bioweapons alongside human counteragents. The aliens realized with growing horror that not only had the humans figured out how to neutralize their most dangerous weapons, but they had probably improved on the designs. The thing is, Wu Jin continued walking slowly around the platform. We never intended to use any of these capabilities. We hoped that we could join the Galaxy Council peacefully and work together for everyone's benefit. We prepared for war, but we planned for peace. He stopped and looked directly at the insect alien who had talked about using human women for breeding. The bug creature clicked its claws nervously and tried to move back on its platform, but there was nowhere to go. However, some of the suggestions made here today have shown us that not all species in the Galaxy Council are interested in peaceful cooperation, he said in a voice that was still calm but somehow much more dangerous. Some of you seem to think that humans would make good slaves or breeding stock or entertainment. The holographic display changed to show Earth itself surrounded by defensive stations and patrol fleets that had not been there when the aliens last looked. The planet that they had dismissed as a single weak world was now clearly the center of a military system that could probably fight the entire Galaxy Council to a standstill. We built all of this in 3 years, Wu Jin said quietly. While you were debating whether we were worthy of membership, we were getting ready to defend ourselves against species that might decide we would be more useful as servants than as partners. Several aliens tried to access their communication systems to warn their homeworlds, but found that their signals were being blocked. The human ships were not just jamming communications, they were selectively allowing only certain messages through. They controlled all information going in or out of the meeting area. Now we have reached a decision point, Wu Jin announced. The holographic displays showed tactical assessments of every major species in the Galaxy Council, including detailed plans for defeating their military forces. The humans had not just been watching, they had been planning for every possible conflict. Earth government has given me authority to make this choice for all of humanity, he continued. We can join your organization as equal partners with mutual respect and shared benefits, or we can demonstrate why it was a mistake to underestimate a species that has spent its entire history learning how to survive by fighting things bigger and stronger than itself. The chamber was so quiet that the only sounds were the soft hums and clicks of alien breathing apparatus and life support systems. Every delegate was staring at displays showing just how completely the humans had outmaneuvered them. The species they had thought of as primitive children had somehow become the most dangerous military force any of them had ever encountered. But here is what makes humans different from most species, Wu Jin said, as the tactical displays faded away. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not want to rule over other species or take their worlds or enslave their people. We want to work together to build something better than any of us could build alone. The lights in the chamber returned to normal as the holographic displays disappeared. Wu Jin stood alone on the center platform, looking like the same ordinary man who had walked into the room hours earlier. But now every alien in the chamber knew that appearances could be very deceiving. The Choice is yours, he said simply. You can accept us as equals and partners, or you can try to treat us as inferiors and learn why that might not work out the way you expect. Either way, humanity will survive and prosper. We would just prefer to do it as friends rather than as enemies. The silence stretched on as alien delegates looked at each other and tried to figure out what to do next. They had come to the meeting expecting to either reject the human application or accept it, with conditions that would keep humanity in a subordinate position instead. They found themselves facing a species that could probably destroy their entire civilization if they made the wrong choice. The silence in the chamber lasted for several long minutes as alien delegates tried to understand their new situation. Many of them were talking quietly with their advisors through private communication channels, while others stared at their tactical displays hoping to find some way to challenge what the humans had shown them, but the evidence was overwhelming and impossible to argue with. Finally, Seth, the Vorthek leader, stood up again on his platform. His claws were no longer extended, and his aggressive posture had changed to something more cautious. He looked at Wu Jin like a predator who had just realized he was actually the prey human. You have made your point, he said in his hissing voice that now sounded much less confident than before, but what makes you think we will simply surrender to your demands? We Vorthak have never backed down from a fight, even against impossible. Wu Jin turned to face the big lizard alien with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the entire meeting. I am not asking you to surrender to anything, he said politely. I am offering you a choice. You can continue to think of galactic politics as a game where the strongest species gets to bully everyone else, or you can try something different. The holographic displays activated again, but this time they showed something completely different. Instead of weapons and battle plans, the screens filled with images of human cities and farms and factories. The aliens saw peaceful scenes of humans working together, building things and solving problems. This is what Earth looks like today, Wu Jin explained. The displays showed humans working alongside the few alien traders and diplomats who had visited Earth over the past few years. Humans and aliens were cooperating on scientific projects, sharing art and music, and even playing games together. We have learned that life is better when different species work together instead of fighting each other, he continued. Each species has different strengths and different knowledge. When we combine what we know, we can accomplish things that none of us could do. Alone Zephyrian delegates stood up with electricity still crackling through their crystal body, but much less brightly than before. Your words sound nice, they said, but how do we know you will not use your military advantage to force us to obey your wishes once we accept you as members? Wu Jin smiled and touched his tablet screen again. The displays changed to show the human fleet that had been hidden around the station. All the weapons systems on the ships powered down and the targeting locks disappeared. The human vessels moved back to a respectful distance and began broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. Because we are powering down our weapons right now, he said simply, we could have destroyed everything here and demanded your surrender. But instead we are choosing to trust that you are intelligent enough to see the benefits of cooperation. Over conflict, the aliens watched in amazement as the human ships that had been ready to destroy them just minutes before transformed from a military threat into a peaceful escort. The gesture was more powerful than any words could have been. It showed that humans were serious about wanting partnership rather than domination. But let me be very clear about something else, Wu Jin continued, his voice becoming slightly more serious. The displays showed other human fleets positioned near the home worlds of every major species in the Galaxy Council. We did not just prepare to defend this meeting, we prepared to defend Earth and human interests everywhere. If any species decides to attack human colonies or threaten human civilians or try to enslave human citizens, they will discover that we take the protection of our people very seriously, he said. The defensive fleets were not threatening, but they were clearly capable of responding to any aggression. We do not want war, but we are prepared for it, he explained. We do not want to conquer anyone, but we will not allow anyone to conquer us. We prefer cooperation, but we will not accept subjugation, the mollusk delegate made a wet burbling sound that their translator identified as nervous laughter. Your species seems to have thought of everything they said. How long have you been planning this actually? We have been planning this for about 50 years, Wu Jin replied. The displays showed historical records of human space exploration and first contact protocols Earth. Government started preparing for this day before we even knew you existed. We studied every science fiction story, every military strategy, every diplomatic theory our species had ever created. When we finally made contact with galactic civilization, we already had detailed plans for dozens of different scenarios, he continued. We hoped for the best, but we prepared for everything else too. It is something humans do naturally because our planet taught us that survival depends on being ready for unexpected challenges. The displays showed images of Earth history, including natural disasters, wars, and other challenges that had shaped human development. The aliens began to understand that humans had not become dangerous because they wanted to, but because their world had forced them to become very good at surviving impossible situations. You see, Wu Jin said, addressing the entire chamber. Earth is what galactic scientists call a death world. Almost everything on our planet is trying to kill us. The weather changes without warning. The ground shakes and splits. Open huge storms can destroy entire cities, and even the animals and plants can be deadly. We learned to work together because working alone meant dying alone, he explained. We learned to plan ahead because not planning meant not surviving. We learned to fight because everything else on our planet was also trying to survive, and sometimes that meant fighting us. The aliens had heard that Earth was classified as unusually dangerous, but most had assumed this was an exaggeration. Now they were beginning to understand that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history learning skills that most species never needed to develop, but we also learned something else that many species seem to have forgotten, Wu Jin continued. Life is much easier when you have friends to help you survive challenges. When different groups work together, they can overcome problems that would destroy them individually. The displays showed human history again, but this time focusing on cooperation between different human cultures. The aliens saw how humans had learned to combine their different knowledge and abilities to build civilizations that were stronger than any individual group could create. This is what we want to do with the Galaxy Council, he said. We want to combine human abilities with Vortex strength and Zephyrian intelligence and mollusk biotechnology and everything else that every species can contribute. We want to build something amazing together, but that only works if everyone is treated as an equal partner. He added, looking directly at the aliens who had made the worst insults earlier. If some species think they are superior to others, then cooperation becomes impossible, and everyone loses. The chamber was quiet again as delegates considered what they had learned. The humans had demonstrated that they could destroy the Galaxy Council if they wanted to, but they were choosing to offer partnership instead. The choice was simple, but the implications were enormous. Wu Jin walked back to the center of the platform and looked around at all the alien delegates, who had been so confident just a few hours earlier. Now they looked uncertain and worried, but also thoughtful. Some of them seemed to be realizing that they had been given an opportunity rather than a threat. So what will it be? He asked in his calm, friendly voice. Will you accept humanity as equal partners in building a better galaxy? Or do you prefer the old system where the strongest species gets to make all the decisions and everyone else has to obey? 3 hours later, the Galaxy Council chamber looked very different from how it had started the day. The floating platforms had been rearranged so that all species were positioned at equal heights around the central speaking area. The human platform was no longer at the bottom with the unimportant species, but had been moved to the same level as the most powerful delegations. Wu Jin stood once again at the center platform, but this time he was not alone. Representatives from every major species had joined him to sign the new membership agreement that would bring humanity into the Galaxy Council as full equals. The document was written in dozens of different languages and scripts, but the meaning was the same in all of them. The vote had been unanimous, which surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. Even Seth, the Vorthic leader who had started the day by insulting humanity, had voted to accept them as partners. The big lizard alien now stood next to Wu Jin, looking uncomfortable, but determined to make the best of the new situation. Ambassador Li Wu Jin, Seth said in his hissing voice that was now more respectful than threatening, on behalf of the Vorthic Empire, I want to formally apologize for the words spoken earlier. Today we did not understand what kind of species we were dealing with. Wu Jin smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Seth looked at the hand uncertainly for a moment before reaching out with one clawed finger to touch it gently. The other aliens watched this historic moment when two species that had been enemies hours earlier chose to become allies instead. Apology accepted, Wu Jin said simply. We understand that first impressions can sometimes be wrong on both sides. What matters now is how we work together in the future. The Zephyrian delegate approached next with electricity flickering more calmly through their crystal body. We have reviewed your technological demonstrations, they said in their musical voice, and we are impressed by human innovation. We would like to propose joint research projects that could benefit both our species. The mollusk representatives slid forward on their trail of slime, leaving wet marks on the platform floor. Our bio scientists are very interested in human medical knowledge, they said through their translator. We think that combining our biological expertise with human surgical techniques could save many lives across the galaxy. One by one, the alien delegates came forward to offer cooperation agreements and trade deals and cultural exchange programs. The species that had been making jokes about keeping humans as pets were now competing to become humanity's best friends in the galaxy. The change was dramatic and complete. Within the first hour after the vote, 17 different trade agreements were signed. The Vorthak offered to share their advanced metallurgy techniques in exchange for human tactical training programs. The Zephyrians wanted to combine their energy technology with human engineering to build better spaceships. The mollusks proposed joint colonies where different species could live and work together. But the biggest surprise came when the insect alien delegate approached Wu Jin. The same creature that had talked about using human women for breeding now looked nervous and ashamed. Their many eyes were focused on the ground and their claws clicked together anxiously. Human ambassador, they said in their buzzing voice, we wish to withdraw our earlier statements about breeding programs. We realize now that such ideas were inappropriate and offensive. We offer formal apology to your species, and especially to your females. Wu Jin nodded politely, but his expression became slightly more serious. Your apology is noted, he said, but I should probably mention something important. My wife, Captain Park Mi-young, is currently commanding the lead battleship in our defensive fleet. She asked me to pass along her personal regards to anyone who wanted to discuss that topic further. The insect alien made a sound like 1,000 crickets, all chirping at once in terror, and quickly moved away from the platform. Several other aliens who had made similar comments also decided they had urgent business elsewhere in the chamber. As the formal ceremonies continued, Wu Jin received a message on his tablet computer. It was from Earth government congratulating him on the successful negotiations and authorizing him to begin the next phase of human integration into galactic society. The message also contained new instructions about establishing permanent human embassies and trade missions throughout Galaxy Council space. The transformation continued over the following days as news of humanity acceptance spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans before suddenly wanted to establish diplomatic relations. Trade routes that had been closed to Earth ships for years were now open and welcoming. Human colonies that had been struggling to survive were now receiving offers of assistance and partnership. The Vorthak sent military advisors to help train human defense forces while learning about human special operations techniques. The Zephyrians established joint research facilities where human and alien scientists worked together on advanced technology projects. The mollusks created new biomedical programs that combined the best knowledge from both species, but perhaps the most important change was in how the Galaxy Council itself operated. The old system, where powerful species bullied weaker ones, began to break down as humanity example showed that cooperation worked better than domination. Species that had been enemies for centuries started talking about peaceful solutions to their conflicts. Within 6 months, human diplomatic teams were mediating disputes between alien species and helping to negotiate treaties that had seemed impossible before. The galaxy became more peaceful and prosperous as different civilizations learned to work together instead of fighting each other. Wu Jin himself became something of a legend among both humans and aliens. His calm professional handling of the crisis had prevented a war that could have destroyed multiple civilizations. Other species started sending their own diplomats to Earth to learn human negotiation techniques. A year later, the Galaxy Council voted to move their headquarters to a new space station that was jointly designed and built by all member species. The human contribution was a revolutionary, artificial gravity system that made it possible for different species to share the same spaces comfortably. The station became a symbol of what could be accomplished. When everyone worked together, the old fears about human aggression proved to be completely wrong. Humans turned out to be natural peacekeepers, who were very good at finding solutions that worked for everyone their military strength was used to. Protect weaker species from raiders and pirates rather than to conquer new territory, but the galaxy also learned not to underestimate humans again. The few species that tried to test human resolve discovered that Earth diplomatic corps was staffed entirely by people who had extensive military backgrounds. The humans always preferred to talk, but they were always prepared to do something else if talking did not work. 5 years after that historic meeting, Li Wu-jin retired from active diplomatic service and returned to Earth, where he wrote a book about his experiences. The book became required reading at diplomatic academies throughout the galaxy, and its main lesson was simple: never judge anyone by their appearance, because you never know what they are really capable of. The galaxy had learned that humans were not weak or primitive or harmless, but more importantly, they had learned that humans were the kind of allies worth having, friends who would stand by you in trouble but would also tell you honestly when you were making mistakes, partners who could fight when necessary but preferred to build something better instead.